Hey there, in this video, I'm going to share 3 things to know whether or not a nonprofit really is for you. Let's get into this one. Hey everybody, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I help new and small nonprofits get up and running, and I help people raise money for their new nonprofits so they can pursue their dreams full time. And I drop videos every week concerning like the nonprofit startup process. So if you're in the middle of that journey, make sure you are subscribed to this channel so you can watch and learn all the good things, right? This video is inspired by one of my followers. Her name is Darlene Gormly, and she sent me a really heartfelt email yesterday before I recorded this video, and she shared with me that she was dissolving her nonprofit. And it was a really heartfelt, vulnerable letter because I could tell it's been a painful process for her, and she didn't want to let go of the nonprofit, but she felt like it was the right thing to do. And she shared a lot of wisdom in that email. So in honor of her, I just wanted to share some insights on what it's really like to start a nonprofit and to determine if it's really for you. And so I'm not going to share any like specific details on Darlene's journey, but I do want to lift up the wisdom because it was such a great and honest and heartfelt letter. So I just wanted to honor her journey and also to let her know that it wasn't in vain and you did help somebody, right? Even if you feel like you can't continue on, you did help someone along the journey. So don't be discouraged in that way. But I'm going to actually share in this video 3 lessons that I pulled out of that email with Darlene that I want to share with you if you are starting a nonprofit, if you've already started or you're thinking about it, just so you can be real about this journey. I'm going to always encourage people to start nonprofits because I believe that there are people out there who have skill sets and have solutions to the problems that we're seeing, but they're not always elevated or they're not always given a chance, or people aren't willing to share information. So that's why I wanted to do Boss on a Budget, to share that information. But I also realized that a nonprofit is not always the answer, and a nonprofit is difficult. And I don't ever want to not be real about that, right? I want to always be transparent on this channel. I'm going to always encourage you to do where you feel like you're being led, but do that in wisdom. And so my goal is to share some wisdom so you can decide for yourself what path you need to take. I also want you to keep watching till the end of this video because I do have one piece of overall advice that I want to share to help you avoid the traps that come with the startup process. The first thing you need to know whether or not this is for you is if you're willing to do research and to learn more. If you are starting a nonprofit only because you feel like you have this great idea, you're not willing to research it to see if it's even needed, you're not talking to the people who are impacted by the problem you're trying to solve, you're just kind of stuck in your head saying, oh, I have this awesome idea and I just know it's going to work, so I'm going to go full steam ahead and I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on around me, and I'm just going to go ahead and launch. Now, it seems silly the way I'm describing it, but it's not uncommon for people to feel like I have something on my heart to do. I want to help somebody. One thing I hear a lot about is housing and helping people who are homeless. And people have so many great ideas and their hearts are in the right place, but they don't realize that people have been working on homelessness for years. And there are studies and there's information out there and there are practices that actually work and that actually help with that particular issue. But if you're going full steam ahead, you're not even paying attention to what's going on around you. You're not being intentional about how you launch. You're not being strategic with it all. Then you're going to hit a bunch of brick walls. You're going to learn some really hard lessons. And why go through all of that when people have already done part of the work? So sometimes when people start nonprofits, it's so central to them and their identity, and the idea of using what somebody else is doing or the idea of like learning from others is kind of difficult because they feel like, well, this is my thing. I don't have to worry about what everybody else is doing. But I do want to share that you need to be armed with data and research and information before you decide to put yourself out there with your nonprofit. And this applies in a bunch of different ways. One way it applies is just on the startup process in general. A lot of people get really excited. They know enough to be able to fill out paperwork, but then after the paperwork is done, they don't know what else to do. And so they may be like, oh, it's just this quick paper. Somebody told me how to do it, but they're not understanding the implications of what they're putting on the paperwork. They don't understand why in their bylaws something says one thing and they're just like, oh, well, it's just a template, so I'm just going to go ahead and just put it out there. Not understanding that these are legally binding documents and things that you have to be held to. So first of all, when it comes to like informing yourself of data and research and information, are you actually researching what it means to be a nonprofit? Are you researching how to put together a board? What are the legal responsibilities and ethical responsibilities of a board? Are you training and bringing your board along in that process and in that journey? Do you understand the implications of what's listed on the IRS application? Do you understand the rules around transparency and conflicts of interest when it comes to decisions that your nonprofit is making? Or are you just trying to do your thing and not worry about what's going on around you, right? So that's the first thing. Make sure you understand the nonprofit process. Make sure you understand what a nonprofit is, what a public charity is, what the terms mean, all of that. This channel can help you do that. So I'm linking a video above that gives you a couple of terms that you should know if you are kind of going on this startup journey. But the other way you need to think about doing your research and gathering information is just determining how you're going to implement your programs or how you're going to launch your organization. You should not be going into this blind. So first of all, have you completed a SWOT analysis? That's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's assessing your internal strengths and weaknesses and what's happening externally. Have you done your market research to see what other organizations exist and what they're doing and what they're not doing? Have you assessed where the gaps are, right? Is there an organization already doing exactly what you want to do? And would you be duplicating services if you decide to launch your organization? Or here's another way to look at it. If you want to distinguish yourself, then you don't want to go out there doing what everyone else is doing. So you got to do your own assessment to figure out, how can I stand out and distinguish myself to make sure that what I'm providing is actually needed? Here's another one. Are you actually asking the people you want to serve what they need? Because if you're making assumptions about what works for them without asking them, then you're going about this the wrong way. You should never go about, especially when you're doing like social services, you should never position yourself as the answer or knowing everything when you have not spoken with the people who are actually impacted by the issue. So you need to be doing your research. You need to be talking to them, doing interviews, doing focus groups, or doing surveys, and identifying what their needs are, identify what the real issues are, why those issues are happening, and help work with them to develop the right solutions to address the problems that they're seeing. And then the last thing I'll say about gathering data, research, information, are you looking at studies? Are you looking at actual statistics to really understand your population and to really understand your issue? So remember how I said before, like, people have been working in homelessness for years. So there have been evaluation reports and research reports on what's happening in different jurisdictions across the country, and there are lessons you can learn. And the great things about these research reports is that a lot of times they'll share what's called sometimes a process evaluation. So they'll share what the process was like and what happened well with the process and what didn't. And you reading that information can help you avoid some of the pitfalls that they may have encountered. If they're having problems recruiting and they realize, well, this is why we had problems. Or if they had problem implementing a certain program and say, well, this really wasn't effective for us when we did it like this, you can learn and gather information from that, right? And you don't have to do everything just like everyone else does it, but it's so wise to pay attention to what everyone else is doing so it informs your process to make sure you create the most effective program and organization possible. So I'm going to get off this topic because I spent a lot and I'm just on number one, but I'm just going to say, like, don't ever make assumptions that you know everything. Always evolve. Always assess where you are, assess what's happening around you, and decide if you need to adjust, if you need to pivot, right? Still staying within your mission, but always be assessing the work that you do to see how you can improve and make it better. Number 2, this is how you'll know if you're ready for a nonprofit or not, is are you willing to be stretched? Are you willing to go out of your comfort zone? Now, here's the thing. When you are a founder of a nonprofit, you at some point will have carried out every single task that needs to be done. You are a janitor, right? You are sometimes a driver, you're the executive director, you're the HR person, sometimes you're the accountant. So it's very likely that you would have done every single thing that's required to be done in your organization until you have help or assistance to get it done. And I guarantee you, like even the smartest people don't know how to do every single thing well. So it's going to require you to be open and humble enough to learn something new, but also be willing to push yourself to do something different. And there are some places you will not reach if you are not willing to be shoved out of your comfort zone. And I'm using those words because it's real. One of the real ways it shows up for most people who start their nonprofits is fundraising. Let me tell you how people get really nervous when they have to actually ask people for money, or they have to figure out how to design a strategy to ask for money. And it could be a bunch of different things. Well, how do I do it? How do I ask? Or I'm doing it this way and it's not effective, right? Or when you're asking for grant money, like how do I write grants? I've never done this before. You're going to have to be stretched in ways that you would have never thought you would be stretched. The other thing is you're going to have to deal with people, which relates to my number 3. But sometimes people who start nonprofits or people who are really good at executing programs aren't necessarily good on the people side, which actually means interfacing with people, talking to them, dealing with their issues. Because when you're dealing with people, it's always something, right? And so you got to be stretched to be different. You got to be stretched to show up in ways you may have never had to show up before, and use skills that you never thought you would have to use, and learn new skills and put those skills in place. A lot of people who start their nonprofits are really nervous talking about their nonprofits outside of their inner circles. Sometimes even in their inner circles, they're nervous about talking about their nonprofits. And when I talk to founders, I have to push them, because the reality is if no one knows who you are, then you're not going to get support. They can't help you if they don't know you exist, and they can't help you if they don't know what the need is. So if you don't get into the practice of talking about your organization, talking about the urgency of the issue you're addressing, and kind of getting that down pat, like if you're not going to be willing to do that, then like I said, there are certain levels that you're not going to be able to reach, and certain milestones you're not going to hit. So I just want you to be honest and open with yourself that you're going to do some things that you feel really uncomfortable doing. And a lot of it's going to be around money and people. Those are the two, those are the two biggies when it comes, honestly, probably to any kind of business, but definitely for a nonprofit. So if you're not willing to be pushed when it comes to handling money or asking for money, and when it comes to dealing with people, whether it's internally in your organization or externally, you're going to have a hard way to go. So ask yourself, am I willing to do this? And if not, you may need to consider doing something different, or finding somebody who can complement your skill set. So if you're not comfortable doing some things, you have someone as a point person to help you do the things that you can't do. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to bring up in terms of determining whether or not a nonprofit is for you. Are you willing to lead a team of people? So y'all, this one is juicy, and this one most people struggle with. And it comes out when it comes to people's board of directors. What you have to understand is when you're starting a nonprofit, you're not starting your own business. That's the first thing you got to understand. You have to understand you're not a solopreneur. This is not just your thing. It is not designed to be that way when you have a nonprofit. So it requires you to pull together a team of people first to pull together your board. But then you also may have to deal with committees, or you may have to deal with volunteers. And eventually you may have to deal with staff, right? You have to get your mind right when it comes to people. Because like I said before in point number 2, when you're dealing with people, anything can happen. And it's messy. So when you're pulling together people to serve on your board of directors, you're getting people from different walks of life, more than likely. A lot of people have not served on a board before. They don't know how to be. They don't know how to act. They don't know what the rules are, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing. And then you have people who may have never worked together in this capacity before. And some of these people don't even know each other. So they're all coming in cold. And a lot of people think that you just, like, you put that together and it's just supposed to work. And people get frustrated. Nonprofit founders get really frustrated when they feel like their board is not working well together. Well, here's the reality when it comes to leading teams and leading people. It requires a leader. People are just not going to naturally come together and have a common goal and reach it together and do it in sync. Like, that doesn't happen, right? You need somebody to set the vision and motivate people and guide people along the way. And as a founder, that's you. But a lot of times people are so stuck in the work. They're so like gung-ho about just doing the work and helping somebody that they don't realize that there are different skill sets required to be a founder. And one of those has to be leadership. And when you're dealing with leading a group of people, you got to have those interpersonal skills where you can relate to people, where you can identify their strengths, where you can recognize when they need assistance, right? Figuring out what it takes to motivate people. Keeping them centered on the mission and the vision so they can keep going towards their goal. Pulling people to the side when it feels like they're falling off, or it feels like they're not as dedicated or committed to the organization. It takes all of that just to get people to show up, just to get people to do what they say they're going to do, alongside with you probably doing the majority of the work to get the nonprofit going along. So one thing you really have to pay attention to is your people and what your role is going to be to motivate them, to encourage a bond among the people who are working with you, to help them reach a common goal. So you got to articulate what the goal is, right? You got to make sure that people understand it, and you got to motivate them to continue to work towards the goal. But you also have to navigate all the things that happen. You have to navigate personalities and how people engage with each other on your teams. You got to navigate what people are dealing with in their personal lives. You got to navigate your own stuff. And if you haven't reconciled within yourself that that's something you have to do and something you have to be, you're going to have a hard way to go. So I want you to realize that having a nonprofit isn't just about doing the work. When you're a founder, you got to do so much more. You got to be the external face of the organization, and internally you got to be the one pushing people, motivating people. And I know it's frustrating because most of you guys out there starting nonprofits are like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. So how can I motivate everyone else to do what they're supposed to do when I'm still learning myself? But there's going to have to be a time when you step up as a leader and you say, we're going to learn together. We're going to grow together. We're going to launch this organization together. And your success, like your willingness to be that leader, to step up, to do the things that are required to bring everyone together, even when people aren't pulling their weight, even when people are complaining, or sometimes people will backstab you, or people will betray you, right? Are you going to be the leader? Are you still going to move forward and navigate the mess and all the junk of it all, right? So I said a whole lot of words, but the point is, it requires a strong leader to navigate the startup journey. And you got to decide whether or not that's you. Because if you are, first of all, if you don't have the skill set, or if you're not willing, or you don't have the energy or the will to do it, then this may not be for you, because your success really does depend on the strength of your team and the strength of your support. And if you can't get that supportive network going to kind of undergird the work, it's going to be really hard to advance. Okay. So in the beginning of the video, I promised to share my biggest piece of advice that kind of covers everything that I talked about in this video. And here it is. It's not enough to believe in your organization. And you're probably saying, Tiffany, like, That's contradictory, because you're always telling me you got this and you can do this. Just believe in yourself. Have the confidence to launch. I know that, right? I know fully that in order to be able to launch your organization, you first have to believe that it's possible. And there are certain mindsets and beliefs that you have to check within yourself to make sure you're in the place where you can be successful. That's what I teach. But I also teach that along with having the belief, you got to have the skill sets and you got to put things into action. And without those other two things, it's going to be really difficult to see your nonprofit get to the level you want it to be. So just always remember, you can have the belief, but you got to pair that with the skills and the action. And when you put those three together, that's when things start to happen. So always put yourself in a position where you can learn how to be better for your organization and put things into action. It's not enough to do research. It's not enough to keep watching my videos, though I am so grateful for y'all who watch my videos and share my videos. I love it. But it's not enough to just do that and just be stuck in a learning phase. You also have to execute, right? And so again, when you have the beliefs and the skill sets and then the action, then you can really start to move. So y'all, this video was not meant to discourage you. It's actually meant to encourage you to make the right decision. The reality is having a nonprofit is not the right decision for everybody. Even some of you watching this video, even some of you who watched a bunch of my videos and like, I have such great ideas, but it's not always the best idea for you. And sometimes it's not the best idea for this season. So you got to assess for yourself whether you want to do this or you should do this or not. But even throughout that journey, I want to help you get there, right? I want to help you feel okay with whatever decision you make. So if you need help, if you need to talk to me, links and ways to contact me are in the description box below. I do offer consultations if you need help with your nonprofit journey. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Thank you for supporting Boss on a Budget. If you need help with your nonprofit, you can visit me at bossonabudget.com, and you can always catch me in the next video. So I'll see you next time.